Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
And welcome to this week's edition of the Steele Report, as we bring to you this week another of our local and congressional candidates, and this time it's Sarah Corkery making her first appearance here on the Steele Report. She is a Democrat out of Cedar Falls. She is a wife, mother, small business owner right here in the Cedar Valley. And as I understand it, Sarah, you have never run for office before. This is your first test of the water, so to speak. Why now, and why this particular congressional race?
So the why now is really important. I've had breast cancer not once but twice. And after going through that, I thought, let's make it better for the next person going down this road. And unfortunately, in Iowa, we are the only state where the cancer rate is still increasing, and we have one of the highest rates of cancer throughout the nation. So I joined with Beyond Pink team, and we went to Washington, D.C. with the National Breast Cancer Coalition and learned to lobby with our federal legislators for things we need. So one thing we needed to get signed is the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. What that does is that if you're under 65 and you have a terminal disease with breast cancer that has spread to other parts of your body, currently, if you can't afford private insurance, you have to wait 5 months to get on disability and 2 years to get on Medicare. That's the waiting period. Well, people with this disease generally don't live a long time, so we asked all of our elected officials to waive the waiting period. And other diseases have the same waiver, ALS and end-stage renal disease. So we asked all of them, and unfortunately Ashley Hinson said no multiple times. And when we pressed her on why she wouldn't sign it, she said if she helped people with breast cancer, she would feel obligated to help more people with cancer, and that would be too expensive. Well, that wasn't good enough for me. And we had our own friends make videos and ask her over and over. And finally, I got mad enough that I said, I'm going to run for Congress, and I will sign that when I'm elected. And on October 17th of last year, I made a video outside my house, and I said I will sign it when elected. And on October 17th, Ashley Hinson finally added her name to that bill.
Well, that's progress then, isn't it?
It was progress.
Okay, so what kind of Democrat are you? How would you describe yourself as a Democrat? Are you very liberal? Are you radical? Are you progressive? Are you traditional? Describe yourself as a Democrat. This is totally philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats. No one's willing to budge either way for some reason. Where are you on that? I'm
more of a moderate Democrat, and here's lucky. In the 22 counties, generally you get your strongest candidate, and usually we both start pretty far apart on Democrat versus Republican, and work our ways towards the middle. I'm already in the middle. The reason is I don't think college should be free. I think that there's different pathways for jobs, and we need to find pathways for those. But maybe we can get student loans at 0% or lowered so people can dig back out of them. I'm also very thrifty. I know how to stretch a dollar. I literally need to know how things are paid for. I balance my budget. I know a half a gallon of milk is less than $2. And so we need to be responsible and know what we're spending and how it gets spent. So that makes me a little bit different kind of a Democrat, but I very much want to make sure our party is welcoming and inclusive of all, and that is the state I would like to see Iowa return to.
So you mentioned Ashley Hinson. She's the current incumbent Republican in the 2nd District. She defeated 4 years ago, Abby Finkenauer, in a very close race, 2%, about 10,700 votes. But then as the 2nd District changed a little bit, she increased her victory over one of the strongest candidates to come out of here in a long time, Liz Mathis, you know, of course, and beat Liz by over 25,000 votes. So you would need about 13,000 people to change their minds. What is your strategy on doing that?
So we've been doing it the old school way. We've been going out, grassroots, talking to people, looking them in the eye, and telling them our story. You know, I've chosen to run for this, not for personal or political gain, but really because I see a need that we need to remove a person in Washington who is not representing our interests and put someone out who is. And who better than a real person who's never run for office before? And I do believe I can flip those votes because we have been talking to Republicans, independents, and Democrats. So we are getting more people flipping over to our side every day. And this district is about a third each, Republican, Democrat, Independent. So it is a flippable seat. Liz Mathis lost because there was low voter turnout. Between 100,000 and 200,000 registered Democrats stayed home that cycle. That is something we can fix, and we already are feeling a momentum shift in that way.
How do you change those minds? I'm just curious about how do you go about that? Ashley Hinson has been very popular. This is a red area. You could probably do this over in Illinois and win pretty easily. You're in the heart of 2nd District, Iowa, which is red right now.
So 2 main reasons. This district has not been friendly to incumbents who do not get their work done. Abby lost, unfortunately, by a very narrow margin, and if anything we've learned is every vote really counts. And then 2 key issues we're campaigning on are women's health care rights and abortion access and education and public education. And those two topics here in Iowa are different than they looked last cycle, because we now have a 6-week ban in place, and we have started to defund public education. And those are things Iowans care about, and care about across the board. So people will turn up this time.
Okay. So you say defund education, though. If you look at Iowa education, maybe the percentage isn't as high, but Iowa's increased educational funding every year, right? You
by about 2.5%.
So money's not the answer.
Money is always the answer, unfortunately. So if we fully funded our public schools, we would have a much different landscape for what it looks like. By only giving public schools 2.5% increase year over year, they have fallen more and more behind. And as you know, school boards, they only have money, certain money they can use for teachers, certain money they can use for buildings, so it's complicated. But we are literally, Linmar laid off 50 employees when they announced we had a 2.5% increase. That's Ashley's own hometown, where she wanted Moms for Liberty to get on the school board. And it didn't happen. And we continue to defund public education with a voucher system that takes $8,000 a kid away from our public schools into private, where not all kids are welcome, including my own child who has a disability.
So what do you mean, not welcome?
They just quite frankly can say, we can't accommodate your child who's legally blind, and he is not welcome there.
So you're saying that only money from taxpayers should go to public schools, none of this money should go to private schools? I believe
K through 12 money should be public dollars for public schools.
Those people pay the same taxes as the people who pay public schools.
And they've always had choice. They've always had choice to send their kids to private school.
But I mean, why should public school kids get the tax break and not the families that want to send their kids to a different school where they think the education is better?
Yeah, so Kim Reynolds already has the money follows the students. You have a lot of choice before the voucher program even went into place. But those dollars, those public tax dollars, belong to public schools, because that is for the best of the good of the community. It's like if I wanted to go to a country club to golf instead of a public course, that's fine, but I know I'm going to pay at a private course, especially when 95% of the private schools in Iowa are Christian, and only half the counties even have private schools. So it's not about parent choice. It's a cover. It's about getting more money into religious schools to teach them a way of combining faith and education, and they're doing that at a risk to our public education. When I see those monies going away from my public school, that's when what you believe ends with what my rights are as a parent.
So are you a religious person yourself?
I have grew up Christian, and my religion is kindness. If I see a need, I fill it. If I need to help somebody, I will.
Because your father was a pastor.
My father's a Lutheran ELC pastor,
I know, so
as we know.
I know. So, okay, the Farm Progress Show is underway right now. The farm bill is stalled in the Senate, controlled by Democrats. Farm income has dropped significantly in the last 2 or 3 years, and we've seen the result of that around here. So what is your plan to increase farm income, which is so vital to the Iowa economy?
First of all, we need to get bills like this unstuck. They stick and sit for so long, and this one is even stuck because of some benefits with SNAP, wanting to limit those in the future, and also we have some incentives to help with the environment tied to some dollars. So those are things that we need to fight for, and I'm a person who's known for getting work done, that if you put a project in front of me, I will see it through. Like, I decided to raise $1 million with another family and build Place to Play Park. And this other mother and I, full-time job, full-time families, we got it done. And that person was across the aisle from me, not a Democrat. So you need to put people in Congress who are willing to get work done, and that means reaching across the aisle. And my opponent has been ranked the least likely person to reach across the aisle in the entire Iowa House of Representatives.
So you're saying if you're elected as a freshman member of Congress, and the Democratic leadership comes to you and says, this is how you're going to vote, you're going to either stand up to them or you're going to go along with them. Which way is that going to go?
I will go with my beliefs. If what I believe is in line with they, I will vote yes. I promise you this. Because I am not in this to be a lifelong politician. I've heard too many people say, you know, once I get in, I'll make a change. And then they get in, and I've heard constituents say, hey, this voucher bill is not popular for people in Hudson. I had an own constituent in Hudson said, please, elected person, don't vote for this. And the person said, I have to vote with the party or I'll never get ahead. Well, I don't care if I get ahead. I'm getting out there for one shot to do all I can do. And if you like it, vote me in. And if you don't, vote me out. But I'm going to vote with my heart and my conscience.
How much money does your campaign have right now?
Not a lot. We don't have a lot.
It took about $6.5 million to win 2 years ago. I mean, Bruce Braley and I talked about this many times when he was around here about, this is a 2-year term. And all you do is spend
All your time fundraising.
Fundraising for money. I mean, if you get that cushy Senate job of 6 years, wow, that's easy. But I mean,
right?
You're spending your money. So I mean, how much money will you be able to? Are you going to get any help from the Democratic Party? I guess is what I'm asking.
Sure. No, we're not. We're not getting help from the Democratic Party. And they were made that on my very first phone call that would not be their role in this campaign. That this really was going to be a grassroots campaign driven by me. And honestly, it has been exciting to be out and about. I have no handlers. I can say what I want. I can express my own thoughts and feelings. We are going to raise close to $500,000, I think, which is way less than that number you just said, $6 million.
Certainly is,
now, you know what doesn't vote? Money. You know what doesn't vote? Polls. You know who votes? People. So I've been doing a different strategy. Instead of doing call time 8 hours a day, I've been out talking to real Iowans in 22 counties and developed what I call super fans. When they hear my story, they go all in and knock doors and beat the banners for me. And the most thing they say is, how come we didn't hear about you sooner? And I said, you know what, we haven't had the press coverage and we don't have a lot of money, but we've got a great story, I've got a great heart, and people vote. Polls don't.
Well, yeah, Cook Political has this a leaning right second district. I don't know how far right it is. I think I saw 4 points or something like that. Is that what your polling on shows? I want to go back to farm though. Okay, how do you, as a freshman member of Congress, how do you convince, or what do you say to companies like John Deere, having his huge layoffs this summer, buying land in Mexico to build plants down there, obviously, and take the worker? What do you say to a company? What do you say to John Deere on this program?
I would say, you know, we need big business to help provide great jobs, but I'm worried about the workers in Iowa who got laid off, the hundreds of Iowans who got laid off and their jobs are now being shipped to Mexico. So we need to stand with unions who have great collective rights to be sure we have strong contacts and look out for them. Thanks to unions, we have things like weekends. We have things like making sure we have safe environments to work. So what we need to do is incentivize companies to stay here. We need to find good base for people to choose from. But Iowa has to become a state where people want to live and work. And what happens is when we become a less inclusive state and less welcoming, people don't want to live here, and it makes it harder for business to do business. And when we're talking all across the board, we're talking about, you know, gender, race, LGBTQ, all of it. We can't be out at the Pride Parade celebrating Pride and then not welcoming those people into our jobs where they can be themselves. And that's the disconnect in a lot of this, is that people don't want to work where they're not valued, and companies, some of them see an opportunity to blame things like the pandemic or a downshift in sales and cut staff. And unfortunately, it's not right. We saw they all still had profits. Companies will find their profits. I'm worried about people paying their grocery bills.
Well, that brings me to inflation. The rate of inflation has come down. In fact, we fully expect the Fed to cut interest rates when they meet in September. But prices have not come down at all. So what is your plan to decrease prices for the average person going to buy a new car, get a mortgage, go buy groceries?
Well, as we know, the economy is based off a lot of factors. The Fed is controlling the prime interest rate. We have supply and demand. We're still coming off COVID where supply and demand is an issue. And that's what happens. When there is a supply issue, prices go up. So I know Kamala Harris is looking at a way to be sure we don't have people who price gouge during times when we have troubles with the supply chain. More and more, here in Iowa, you can buy your meat and groceries locally. That helps with supply chain issues. There's things we can do to control costs. And each of us has our own budgets to balance. So we need to find ways to make sure life is affordable here in Iowa for everybody. And like I said, if any one person, especially a president, could push a button and make the prices go down for groceries and the prices go down for gas, I think they would all push that button right before they ran. But it's complicated. And I think everybody knows the nuances of it. And things are costing more, and we need to find a way to bring those costs down. But for instance, shop at a different store. You know, check where you're getting your groceries. But I wonder if my opponent even knows what a gallon of milk costs.
All right, we're going to take a short break here on the Steele Report. Come back with more questioning for Sarah Corkery, Democratic candidate in Iowa's 2nd Congressional District, in just a moment. And welcome back to this week's edition of the Steele Report. My guest is 2nd District Congressional candidate, a Democrat, Sarah Corkery of Cedar Falls. I want to talk again about some of the issues that are really big in this campaign. And one of the key issues for Democrats this year is reproductive rights. So just tell everybody what's your position on that. And we already know what I think, but go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I believe that all medical decisions should be between a person and a doctor. I believe it should be a protected health conversation like all health conversations. So really, I don't believe the government has any position that should be involved between any medical decision. So I believe there should be. It's 100% pro-choice. People need to have choices over their own bodies, and the reason is because it's complicated. There are things like ectopic pregnancies, molar pregnancies, preeclampsia, conditions where women's lives need to be saved, and there is no viable pregnancy. So again, I believe all decisions, but especially reproductive decisions, should just be between a person and the doctor.
Okay, how far into a pregnancy do you think an abortion should be allowed?
Well, our Iowa used to say 20 weeks, which is a pretty common standard. Like I said, I don't believe there should be any conversation about number of weeks because the conversation should not be in the government's hands. My personal story is at 38 weeks pregnant, I almost lost my son Jude. We were both in medical duress, and I remember the nurse at Allen who said she can count on her hands the number of people she worried died, and Jude and I were on that list. My blood pressure was high, my heart rate was low, Jude was going crazy, and we had emergency C-section. And I just remember thinking, he was 38 weeks along inside of me. He had a big sister, Lucy. He had a crib. He had a name. He was most wanted. And to think about him having a fetal demise at that point, and then your options of still continuing with a labor or having a C-section, somehow the baby has to come out, no matter if it's at 38 weeks or not. So when people say people are electively having abortions at 38 weeks or any beyond 20, is not true. It means there is a medical problem that a doctor is involved with where a life is at risk or a dream has been dashed. So that is, it's fear-mongering to say people are having these abortions so late in term. Nobody gets pregnant hoping that they're going to have an abortion.
You're a mom,
yes,
so
right.
When you become a mom, then you realize that your life is now secondary to that of your child, right? And so I'm just
well,
curious,
honestly,
do people,
my husband and I took a pact before we had the baby, and we did say, if my life was in the line, pick me, because we can make more babies. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying.
But who speaks for the child, is what I'm saying.
Who speaks for the child?
Once you have, the big debate in Iowa is 6 weeks, and I'm not taking sides here. I'm
right,
asking the questions that
so it's currently the
people ask me. So the fetal heartbeat is in play. That means the baby is living. So who speaks for the baby can't say, hey, don't do this to me, you know?
But at 6 weeks, it's not a baby. I'm not a scientist, but Dr. Emily Bavers, who started a health pack, has explained it to me that there are cells that grow, and then it's an embryo, and then it's a fetus, and then it's a baby. So early on at 6 weeks is not, that is one indication of a pregnancy progressing, but cannot be taken outside and breathe and live at that point. Rob Sand, you know, is a religious guy, and he's our auditor, and we love him. And he even believes, you know, there's something in the Bible about life begins with breath. And so that's where people can agree or disagree. My opponent believes life starts at conception. So she believes at the minute you are pregnant, that you should have no abortions. She has said this. She signed the Life at Conception Act, which means no abortions, even in rape, incest, or life of the mother, and no protection for in vitro fertilization. That is a long way from where we are. But who speaks for the baby? The mom does. But also the mom does emotionally, financially, medically, legally. So it's complicated. It's not just a simple situation. Nobody is taking this lightly. This is complicated and agonizing, and guess what? If we limit people's ability to have an abortion, they will still happen. They will just happen out of state, or people will do them unsafely. And so just by making them illegal does not solve the problem. We need to solve unwanted pregnancies, and that's where we should start talking, because I think we all agree that that would be the best place to solve this problem.
Okay, so it's obviously an ongoing debate, a key issue in this campaign, and you know, as a man, I have no business even talking about it. I'm just telling you what people ask me about all the time. So that's why
just to
I'm really
clarify, there is a 6-week abortion ban in Iowa, one of the most extremes across the country, which means if you find out you're pregnant at 4 weeks, you now have 2 weeks to find a doctor who's willing to do a procedure. You have to make 2 appointments, and from what I've heard, come up with about $750 to $1,000. If you can't do that, you may be having another child that has not been planned. How is that economically helping anybody? What if the mother has mental health issues? We are last in the country for mental health services, lowest providers per capita per bed. So we have the lowest rating for OBGYNs and the lowest ratings for maternal mental health. So these are all factors that are going to be a big problem when it all explodes. Many doctors practicing in Iowa, OBGYNs, never practiced pre-Roe versus Wade, to see women come in sepsis and sick, and now they have to draw the line of how sick are you, how close to death are you, before they make the decision, because then their medical license goes under review. And doctors will not mess around with that. So this is about power and control over women, and we need to make sure women have access to all health care options that they need, and that is a personal decision. And again, people can believe what they want, just don't step in between me and my doctor.
Okay, let's move to the border, because I'd like to know where you stand on securing the United States border. And for example, what is your definition of dreamers, and what do you think we should do with dreamers?
I think dreamers need to have their path back to citizenship and have that hope that they had, so that we can find people that find legal pathways to the United States, not illegal. And Democrats worked very hard with Republicans to put together a great plan about the border that the Border Patrol signed off on, that would have given President Biden the ability to shut the border down at any moment. And guess who blocked it? Republicans, because they didn't want to give Biden a win. So I'm sorry, we have problems. They were handed the answer and turned it down. So we have to keep fighting for more funds to get more judges to help see these cases through, and keep the people out who are illegal and get people in that are past the citizenship, because we are based off a country that was based off immigration, and we believe diversity adds value, and there are jobs in Iowa that we need filled by people who are willing to do the work. So it becomes an economic issue, it becomes a personal issue, a moral issue, but we need to fund it better, but we need to stop this bickering and come up with real solutions, and not just arguing about it and throwing the grenade back and forth.
Obviously, President Trump did put a lot of debt on too, not quite as much as President Biden has. We're up over $33 trillion. When does this end, though? When does the spending end? You just, I mean,
it's out of control. It is out of control. You know, and me just looking at the basic numbers. So I'm Sarah Corkery, running for office. I'm not being paid to do this. We are giving up a year of our life. Ashley Hinson, who is our representative, and I'm sure that is across the board, I looked up. She's got a congressional staff, not her campaign staff, her congressional staff of $1 million of people helping her. Wow. I think, what if we employed those people right here in Iowa? Wouldn't that be a difference?
Well,
so, and I know that's
you'll get the
across
same
board.
staff, you know, if you're elected.
Well, if I have a say, I would be trimming it down a bit.
Are you telling me you're going to turn down that $1 million?
I would say
I don't think so.
I will be turning down money, because you know what? That's how this wasteful spending just goes again. Well, so-and-so did it, so-and-so did it. Well, at some point, the buck needs to stop. And I would say it stops with me. Tough politicians got to make tough calls, and if someone doesn't go first, no one will go first. We need to trim the fat right where we are.
First.
I will go first. I know, but this is why we are where we are. It's not about these big spending budgets. It's about individual choices. And Ashley says she's the most conservative and fiscally conservative person. Why doesn't she trim down her staff? I would just say she has the ability. I recently had to trim down some of my staff. It's not easy to do, but you make the call, because you know what? I don't want to leave this country in debt to my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and someone's got to go first. Someone's got to go first to save the climate too. Nobody's really moving too fast on that, but I'm willing to, because you know what? Smart people plant trees that they know that they will never sit under, and we got a lot of work to do on this money and the climate.
Okay, so you say you want to go first. Okay, what's the first thing you would cut in the federal budget?
Well, my own congressional staff, whatever
I don't mean that's a minor thing. I'm talking about
but it's still $1 million, Ron. $1 million is a lot to this lady.
I'm talking about billions of dollars. That's where the money. How do you feel about sending the money to Ukraine?
I have supported it. I've supported it because in that situation, we need the world to know we stand up to bullies. And Putin is not our friend, and we need to say, if he doesn't stop with Ukraine, where will he stop? So we need to stop him and send a message that we are.
But how long can this go on? What is the timetable? Before you say there's no progress is being made.
I know, right? Because it's all in gridlock and stopped. I'm excited to see what Kamala brings to the table. Because I think, you know, President Biden has had a long history with these folks and has a lot of his own, you know, history. And what we need to do is get some fresh people to the table with fresh ideas who are willing to look at it in a new way.
So we're going to run out of time here quickly. You're running on what issues then in this campaign?
My main issues for this campaign are access for women's health care and access to abortion, to be specific, and making sure public education is fully funded. And I know some of that is a state issue because of the situation we're in, but guess where Iowans vote? Here at home. So if you're mad about education in Iowa going downhill, the public education, if you're mad that women don't have the same rights that they had 50 years ago here in Iowa, then you need to turn up to vote. And we need more Democrats and independents and even Republicans to come over and learn, be excited to join the team, because this is the time when we will be able to make huge changes with those areas. So women's rights, education, and we're voting here in Iowa. I'm proud to be an Iowan, and I'm proud to pay my taxes here, and that's why I talk about Iowa so much.
Our Democratic congressional candidate in the 2nd District, Sarah Corkery, Democrat, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program. We'll wrap things up on the Steele Report here in just a moment. And welcome back as we wrap up things for this week's edition of the Steele Report. My thanks to candidate in the 2nd Congressional District, Democrat Sarah Corkery, for taking time to be the guest on this week's program. We'll have other candidates as we get closer to election. That's it for this week. As always, thanks for watching.